that is us. Good evening, everyone. For those of you, how many weren't here last week? Okay. For those of you that weren't here last week, I'm Chris and this is Deb. For the rest of you, welcome back. It's great to see you. In terms of what we are going to be talking about this evening, it's pretty much to pick up the conversation that we started last week in terms of the entrepreneurial process. Our focus last week was around the entrepreneurial mind, the founder of the entrepreneurial business, and in that light it's great to have Erica along, and we'll be hearing her story in terms of her and Kim founding Kim Crawford Wines. Picking up tonight around the notion of opportunity, next session with Andy Hamilton around resources, and then a session on teams. But before we do that, what we want to do is to say, okay, this is what we're going to be covering over the next few weeks, but we'd like to go back to the session that we had last week. So, what were 2 or 3 of the things from Mike Hutchinson's presentation that you thought were relevant to starting a business? Discuss these with the person sitting next to you. Now, all of those people that put their hand up and weren't here last week, your task is to find somebody that was here last week. So it may involve talking to somebody that's in front of you or behind you, or God forbid, standing up and actually moving. So please, just take a couple of minutes, 1 or 2 things that were relevant from the presentation last time.
I've got my notes here. Oh, right, okay. So you need a part. No, so we talked the first time about creativity. You keep talking about creativity. Then you talk about deep because you say it's easy to have an idea that it's really difficult to make. Right. Then you said we think of creativity and the way
What were some of the things that you got out of last week's discussion with Mike? What came up for you? It was great, isn't it? There's this loud chatter and then silence when we ask a question.
There are, well, from Mike's perspective, there were 12 important things about steps to starting a business, and a lot of the time a single person is good at one of those steps or 2 of those steps, but you need to actually incorporate all 12 to have a successful startup.
Great.
And Mike was successful at the advertising and the marketing side of things, but that was kind of the end of the process.
Yeah, and the beginning.
And yeah, well, and also the fact that the circle wasn't kind of 1 to 12, it was all of those things amalgamated.
And going round. Great, good. And that feeds into what we'll be covering off in the next couple of weeks in terms of resourcing and teams and things like that. Great. Other comments or observations from last week?
I think he said something about that he failed 4 times but succeeded 5 times.
Yeah.
So it's like the idea of like persistence and not giving up.
Yeah, that notion of tenacity, that lots and lots of successful entrepreneurs have a trail of less successful ventures behind them frequently. Yeah, great. Yeah.
Something that really interesting is that idea of not having a control environment. So don't think that they will come. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And he gave lots of examples of how people come up with good ideas in social settings and informal settings and in conversations with others. Yeah, great. Any other comments, observations? Yeah.
He also said that adaptability to change is really useful in businesses.
Yep. Being able to keep seeing changes, predict them and move with them. Yeah. And somebody like Mike has been in business for 40 odd years, I'd pick. And has had many careers in many different businesses, and the capacity to change is a hallmark of him being able to keep engaging in new and different businesses. Yeah. Any other comments, thoughts?
Another one I like is that building good ideas is about storytelling.
Storytelling, yeah.
But I think lots of things are about storytelling.
Yeah.
So business ideas are also.
Yeah, and that's a lot about brand and marketing, isn't it? Being able to backfill a story. These slides are on the web, folks, if they're of any interest, but some of the things that we just captured. In terms of the entrepreneurial mind, we talked about that just before. Tenacity, curiosity, the ability to engage others and a whole multitude of different sorts of people with different skills and capability, and aware of your own skills as well as those of others that you need to bring in. Certainly, he spent a lot of time talking about innovation and where ideas come from and how ideas are taken from idea stage to opportunity, and that's something that we'll pick up in a little more detail tonight. And again, he had his 12 steps, some of which he was really clear about his capacity and capability for, and others that he was very, very specific about needing to bring other people in for. And then he talked a lot about where ideas come from and what makes good ideas in terms of the requirement to test, to keep thinking, but also is pretty specific about people don't know what they don't know. And so we often put a lot of stead into market research, but there is a balance there between asking people and also just presenting to the market something new and different, because people don't necessarily know what they do and don't want, and what they do and don't like. And that the world is changing.
Picking up on that last part, or one of the branches of the mind map, is this idea in terms of when is an idea an opportunity. And some of the starting things you may need to think about is this business attractive, durable, timely, anchored in a product or service, adding value? And then, I guess the key question that needs to be in your mind is, who needs to be uppermost in your mind? So what do you think the answer to that question is if you're thinking about a business opportunity? Who has to be uppermost in your mind? I'm hearing it whispered. The consumer? Absolutely. The customer. The customer is the one that has to be uppermost in your mind. Because if you don't have a customer, you don't have a business. And this idea of having a great idea is, yeah, fantastic. But if you don't have a customer, because really, often the mistake that we make when we think about starting a business is all we focus on is what we're selling. Well, actually, I don't care what you're selling. It's quite immaterial to me what you are selling if I want to do business with you as a customer. I'm only interested in what I'm buying. And it may sound as though it's just sort of a little bit of semantics around that, but it's a completely different mindset. Often, particularly maybe in the technology space, the engineering or science space, we have such a commitment and such a belief in the product that we've got or the service that we've got and all the bells and whistles that it offers, that actually from the customer's point of view, those things can often get in the way, confuse what it is that they actually want to buy. So it's really important to think about what your customer is buying. So then if we're thinking about what the anchors of a superior business are, it's got to create or add value for the customer. Of course you've got to be making money in the sense of making this a sustainable venture, but it has to be adding value for the customer. It has to solve a significant problem. Some people talk about what's the pain that you're addressing, what's the problem, what's the challenge, what's the issue. To meet a significant want or need for someone who is willing to pay a premium. I think that's another good way in terms of thinking about what we're doing in New Zealand, often in a niche market. So let's find that niche market where people are willing to pay a premium.